The big story right now, it's news coming in from London. The former liquor baron and fugitive Indian businessman Vijay Mallya has been arrested once again by police in the United Kingdom. According to reports, Mallya has been arrested on new charges of fraud. His lawyer has said that they are aware that the new charges were a possibility, going on to add that Mallya is likely to get bail if he is arrested. So these are the initial reports coming in on Vijay Mallya. We're hearing that he's been arrested in London on fresh charges. Joining me live on the broadcast is my colleague WION's London Bureau Chief Mandy Clark. Mandy, what more details can you share with us at this point?
Well, I've been following the case, and from the very beginning of his court case, his defense lawyer stated that they had heard that there would be more charges coming down the pipeline from the Indian government, but they didn't get confirmation if those charges were going to come off or not. What we do know is the charges are still related to the wider issues of fraud, and they're an addition to all the other charges that he's currently facing. So it was expected, so he's rearrested on these new charges so it can be brought into the bigger case that he's facing in the UK. His main hearing is going to start in the early December 4th, and that's going to be an extradition hearing to decide whether there's enough evidence to show that he should go back to India and face the court for those fraud charges. But he's been arguing that he won't get a fair trial in India. So it's the extradition case that will decide if he's going to go back and ultimately face those charges.
All right, stay with me, Mandy. Raghvendra Rao, my colleague, WION's correspondent, also joining us on the broadcast from the newsroom. Raghvendra, do we have more details on what the nature of the charges are this time around?
Aisha, the information that has just trickled in, it just says that he has been arrested in a money laundering case. Now also the fact that Vijay Mallya is a fugitive from India since his now defunct Kingfisher Airlines has defaulted on loans worth 9,000 crores of rupees. That is one of the biggest charge against him from which he is escaping the law, so to say. But this particular arrest of his, because he has been arrested earlier and then bailed out, but this particular case appears to be a different one. It involves some money laundering details, and details have just started trickling in. In a while from now, I think we will have more clarity.
Absolutely. Raghvendra, also his lawyer has gone ahead and said that they were aware that these charges might be likely and that the option of bail is available to Mr. Mallya. And that is really what happened the last time he was arrested in London as well. He was taken in by authorities but then was released on bail the very next day. So perhaps this might follow similar lines. What do you say?
That remains to be seen, Aisha, because it all depends on the kind of charges which are slapped on Vijay Mallya. It also depends on whether those charges are bailable or can he be granted bail for them. That remains to be seen. But yes, given the nature of allegations against him, the fact that he's already on bail in the most important case where he's accused of having not returned loans worth 9,000 crores of rupees to Indian banks. He's out on bail in that case, and the fact that this case has now surfaced, it really needs to be seen in close detail as to what exactly the charges are, what are the sections which are being slapped against Mallya, whether those sections allow for bail or not. So those bits need to be clarified, and I think in a bit from now we will have more clarity.
Fair enough. Stay with me, Raghvendra. Mandy, whenever Vijay Mallya comes up for discussion here in India, it does generate a lot of attention, given the tune of money that's involved in these cases. But what sort of reaction does these news items get in the United Kingdom? What sort of profile does Mr. Mallya enjoy in the UK?
He has a freewheeling kind of playboy image where but also someone who's broken the law, a fugitive. But he has a far more positive spin because they haven't been following how much he's defrauded. They're aware that he ran an airline, so he's often likened to Richard Branson. But the negative press that is pervasive in India, where all the fraud allegations, that doesn't make it through. So he still has a privileged position in London without the baggage of all the issues and the trial that he faces.
Absolutely, and it seems that that negative press that he gets in India is also part of the reason why he keeps saying that he doesn't believe he's going to get a fair trial back in India, which is why he's resisting in many ways accepting some of these charges. But Mandy, also, if I can ask you, there's been a lot that's been made about India's continued pressure on the United Kingdom in trying to bring Mallya to book. Do you feel perhaps that even these cases, whenever they come up, whenever he is arrested, only add to the cooperation that exists between the United Kingdom and India when it comes to cases such as these?
I think the United Kingdom and India have a very close relationship in this regard. Both are working hand in glove, really, to make this the strongest case possible for extradition. Now, it will be up to the judge to decide. It's really out of the hands of the British government because it's facing an independent court. So they can't put influence on the judge, but they certainly can do their utmost to present as strong as case as possible to convince the judge that there is a case to be answered in India. And certainly we've heard the lawyer who's the Crown Prosecution Service who's working with the Indian authorities saying he has they've been incredibly helpful and giving him as much information as possible. So you're seeing a very close working relationship with both Indian and the British Judicial Service to try and create a strong case.
Right. Raghvendra, is that really the clincher then when it comes to the Vijay Mallya case? That does India really have a watertight, strong enough sort of case to put in front of the judicial system in the United Kingdom to convince them, really speaking, of Mallya's return to India? And what sort of position does that put India in terms of the extradition understanding that exists between the two countries?
Well, Aisha, India has already put in an extradition request before the UK government to get Vijay Mallya extradited. Now, it all depends on the legal proceedings which are currently ongoing in the United Kingdom. The judge there who is hearing the case needs to be convinced of the fact that India actually has a strong enough case which merits Mallya's deportation back to India. Now, that's the legal process which is currently on, and it remains to be seen whether the Indian side can come up with the requisite proof, with the requisite case needed to get Mallya deported back to India. But yes, that said, the fact that India and UK have been collaborating and cooperating with each other in matters like these, one would hope that Indian government manages to push forth a strong enough case which is able to convince the judicial system in the UK and eventually leads to Mallya's deportation back to India.
Sure. Raghvendra, also, I mean, the cases in this case have been filed by both the Central Bureau of Investigation and the Enforcement Directorate. Does that sort of complicate in some ways the case that's being presented, that there are two separate agencies pursuing cases against Mallya, or does that in some ways simplify the charges against him?
No, in fact, it only strengthens the entire case. It just goes on to show that he is an offender who is being probed by multiple agencies, be it the CBI or the ED. So it only goes on to show the vast range of economic offences which Mr. Mallya is alleged to have committed. And the real challenge before the Indian side now is to make a strong enough case which stands the test of the UK judicial system. And it really remains to be seen whether the judiciary there, the judge hearing the case, is actually convinced by the arguments which are put forth by the Indian side. So the judicial system will take its own course, but the fact that Mr. Mallya has been charged with multiple offences under various acts, and that there are a multitude of charges against him, and multiple agencies are probing him. It just goes on to show the kind of offences he's alleged to have committed. So a judicial process is something which often takes time. In India, it can take much longer than in some other countries, but there is reason to believe that this particular case will see an expedited trial in the UK, and the Indian side has been in constant touch with its UK counterparts. The Indian top bureaucracy, they have been in constant touch with their UK counterparts. Visits have been happening. Behind the scenes, a lot of activity is happening, and India has reason to believe that the kind of case it has against Mallya, it will eventually prove to be a watertight case in the UK courts.
Well, we'll have to wait and watch to see how exactly things proceed. But Mandy, one last question from you. Going by how things have happened in the past when, Mr. Mallya has been taken in and then released, do we have any sort of idea of how exactly things might proceed today, given that the reports coming in right now is saying that he's been arrested under the Prevention of Money Laundering Act in London? How exactly do proceedings go on from this point, for today at least?
Well, what we're hearing is that he will be due to appear in Westminster's Magistrates Court in 45 minutes from now, where he's going to be, those new charges will be read out to him. It will likely be a part of the wider extradition case that he's facing. It's in addition to all the evidence that have been provided so far, and the possible fallout is if more evidence needs to be gathered for these charges, the judge might decide to push the extradition case back to give the defense a bit, both the defense and the prosecutors a bit more time to examine the evidence going forward. So that's one possibility, that the extradition case might be pushed back, but we'll find out a bit more in less than 45 minutes. What exactly these new charges are and how it might affect the ongoing case.
All right.